An engineer emailed me a few weeks ago. Big project, construction, some 20 million euros. He is brilliant at his job, but his English isn't quite where it needs to be. He's got stakeholder meetings, negotiations, contracts, all coming at him fast. And he was choosing between two things. One was working with me, one-on-one course built around his actual project spread over 12 weeks. The other was a 3-day intensive course. Small group, beautiful setting, all meals included, lovely location, somewhere quiet. 4,500 euros. He picked the 3 days. And he won't be the last either. Barely a month goes by without an engineer asking me whether some 3-day miracle is worth it. Spoiler, I have opinions. So this one's for everyone who's ever asked. I want to tell you why it is usually the wrong call and how you spot the same trap before it costs you. I'm Olivia Augustin, engineer, English teacher, professional myth buster, and this is the English for Engineers podcast. Let's get into it. So, here's what you are up against. You need better English for the meeting, for the client, for the tender document that has to be right. And the market knows you are stressed. So it sells you shortcuts. Fly somewhere for 3 days, get a native speaker as a teacher, pay a premium because expensive must mean good. 3 promises. All 3 sound reasonable. All 3 are wrong. And I mean, not in a, well, it depends way. Wrong in a way you can actually test, like a spec sheet. And that's this episode. I'm taking apart the 3 things engineers get sold when they want to fix their English fast. We're talking about the 3-day cure, the native speaker myth, and the price tag illusion. And then I'll tell you what actually works instead, the boring version, the one that survives a real negotiation 6 months from now. So remember that one engineer I told you about in the beginning. He was torn between a 12-week course with me and a 3-day intensive course. He did pick the 3 days. And I genuinely get it. I understand. When you are stressed, when you don't have time, if you need something fast, this quick fix, it looks like exactly what you need. You block the calendar, you go somewhere quiet, and you come out better. It feels right. But the problem is, you can't learn a language in 3 days, not even close. And that is a distinction that matters. You can learn about a language in 3 days, absolutely. You can pick up phrases. You get coached on one specific presentation, and you feel more confident for a moment. That part is absolutely real. I'm not saying nothing happens. I'm saying you can learn about a language in 3 days. You can't learn a language in 3 days. Those are 2 completely different things. And the brain doesn't store language that way. Language sticks through repetition over time. It's not one concentrated burst. And that's not even my opinion. That's just memory science. So what does language immersion actually do? It's a short-term spike, and then it's a fast fade. Because if you don't have spaced practice afterwards and in between lessons, most of what you're learning, it will be gone within weeks. So that 3-day language immersion just gives you a quick spike. So if you play that out, you do the 3 days, you go back to your normal work routine, you have no follow up, you are back roughly where you started, minus 4,500 euros. Think about how you actually got good at anything technical. It wasn't a 1 week seminar. You used a tool, you hit a wall, you fixed it, you used it again. Monday, then the next Monday, then the one after. And that repetition over weeks is the whole point. And language is the same skill building process. Language learning is not a content download, it's skill building over time. So, what does actually work for engineers? In my experience, it's shorter sessions spread over weeks and using real work scenarios like your emails, your meetings, the issues you have with your stakeholders. And the time between the sessions, you use them on your life projects. And in a way, it's to catch the mistakes you're making on the job and not in a role play. And none of that sounds dramatic like I'm flying to a convent in Tuscany for 3 days. But what it does, that boring course, it produces an engineer who can hold a 20 million negotiation half a year from now and not just survive next Monday's meeting. Language learning rewards the tortoise every single time. So to recap that, 3 days can make you feel ready, but it can't make you fluent. Repetition over time does that and nothing else. The second thing I promised you to talk about, the native speaker trap. I have a quick question to open that part to start with. If you needed to understand how a suspension bridge works, who do you want to explain it to you? Someone who just drives over one suspension bridge every single day? Or do you want to have a structural engineer explaining it to you? Obviously, you are choosing the engineer because using a thing is not the same as understanding it. And now swap suspension bridge for English because almost every language school in Europe advertises native speakers teachers only like it's the ultimate quality stamp, like hiring a French chef to cook French food. But being born into a language doesn't mean you can teach it. Using a thing is not the same thing as understanding it. And there's actually quite some research about that for a long time. About 80% of English teachers in the world are non-native English speakers. Native speaker status is not a predictor of good quality. So what does predict good quality? It's pedagogy, it's experience, and the big one actually, it's being able to explain why the language works the way it does. And most native speakers can't do that. And it's not their fault. They just absorbed English. Ask an English person why we say I've been working instead of I work. And most will shrug and just say, well, it sounds right. And it just sounds right is a useless answer for an engineer who is learning. You want a rule, a pattern, a clear system that you can apply next Tuesday. Non-native teachers who learned English as adults know it from the inside out. They tripped over the same grammar traps you're tripping over. They made the same mistakes you do. And they know which mistakes non-native speakers actually make because they've made them. And to be fair about it, a native trainer can hold a lovely conversation with you. A qualified native teacher can give you a solid general English lesson. Absolutely. But bring up load calculation, tolerance specs, a tender document, and someone who's never lived in that world will struggle. And I want to give you an example. The example is phrasal verbs. So most English teachers love phrasal verbs, and they should. It's okay. Verbs like get along, catch up, figure out, run into. Phrasal verbs are verbs that are up of two words. And that's how English sounds in a coffee kitchen. And you need those phrasal verbs to survive small talk. But now switch the context. You're writing a technical spec, or a risk assessment, or a formal email to a client about a delay, to an international team of other non-native speakers. And phrasal verbs are then an absolute no-go in technical English. As an example, we figured out the issue has to become we identified the issue. The system broke down becomes the system failed. Well, we'll look into it becomes we will investigate it. Let's put off the meeting should become let's postpone the meeting. And not just because it's from a more informal tone to a formal one. Phrasal verbs sound casual, sometimes vague, and they translate badly across cultures. And that badly translating across cultures, that's the problem. Because phrasal verbs are not always 100% clear, and they can cause a lot of confusion if non-native speakers are communicating with other non-native speakers. And that's a safety risk. And in technical English, you want the unambiguous word, which is precise and professional. Most English teachers won't flag that, and it really is a red flag. They will happily drill you on phrasal verbs because that's what sounds native, that's what sounds fluent, what sounds good. An engineer who teaches you English says, great for the coffee kitchen, but now let's rewrite it for your stakeholder email. And that's the difference. And it is why when I teach, I lean on the thing that native-only schools can't. I'm an engineer. I know what your meetings sound like. I know the English you need. And almost more importantly, I know the kind you don't. Clarity beats complexity, always. So being a native speaker is not a quality stamp. Someone who can explain why in your context beats someone who just sounds right. Now let's go on to the last or third myth that I want to bust today. Expensive isn't effective, and what actually is. Engineers are usually pretty sharp buyers. We compare specifications, we check tolerances, and if you buy something, you want data, not just vibes and feelings. You would never approve a €4,500 component without reading the datasheet. And I mean, we're normally dabbling in €1,000,000 projects, and even then we check for a couple of $1,000. And yet, in language training, something really weird happens. Smart, analytical people see a price tag from a couple of €1,000 on a 3-day course and think, whoa, expensive, must be good. Like a deer in a headlight. But that's not engineering. That's a cognitive shortcut. And it's called the price quality heuristic. Our brain uses price to guess quality when we don't know how to judge the product directly. And we do that with wine, we do that with watches, with consultants, with language courses, all the classic cases. Why? Because sometimes expensive feels reassuring, but effective is quieter. And it is a usual shortcut sometimes, I'm not saying that. But it fails badly in language learning because for language learning, price is almost completely unrelated to results. So, what actually determines results is how much you practice between sessions, not during, and whether the content that you're learning about matches your real work, whether your teacher can explain why, not just the correct what. whether you show up consistently for weeks and not only 3 days. And also, whether the training targets the communication you actually do. Because there's no need in exercising written English if all you need it for is being out on site and talking to people on the building site. And the other way around. If you only ever write English emails, I won't drill you on pronunciation. So we need a better frame for engineers. How can I explain it? Imagine you have to move a huge boulder, a large stone. You don't call for Rolls Royce. You bring in the leap hair and you get the job done. And for an engineer negotiating a 20 million contract, the right tool isn't a 4,500 weekend with a native speaker and 3-course meals. It's the training that looks ugly on paper. It's the scheduled sessions, the boring consistency, the real work scenarios, the follow-up between lesson. And that produces something that survives the real pressure at work. Okay, we are 3 myths down. I told you what actually works if you're an engineer who needs better English for your meetings, your stakeholder meetings, your international projects, or out on site with your subcontractors. But I want to leave you with a couple of tips before we close this episode. Number 1 is treat English like a system, not a subject. You wouldn't learn systems engineering by memorizing the ISO 15288. You'd get into EA or Relatics and use it, break it, fix it, use it again. Same here. Grammar rules in isolation are useless. The grammar that you apply to your actual email from last Tuesday, that is useful. Tip number 2, train over weeks, not days. It's about repetition that is spaced out. That's how skills consolidate. And it's actually a lot easier to hop on a 1-hour one-on-one call over Teams early in the morning or after office hours than to disappear to a convent in Tuscany for a week with your inbox quietly exploding. Tip number 3, use engineering as the context. The English you need isn't a fiction writer's English. You don't try to win the Nobel Prize for literature. And the English you need isn't even marketing managers' English. It's meetings, technical handovers, scope clarifications, written requirements, negotiations with people whose accents you have never heard before. And you need to train on that. Tip number 4. Get a teacher who can explain why. Someone who learns several languages the messy way with all the frustrations and false friends. Someone who's lived abroad and knows miscommunication is rarely about grammar. It's usually about culture. Get a teacher, someone who doesn't flinch at tolerance or interface spec. And tip number 5, and this is the one I want you to sit with, forget fluency. Aim to be understood. The confidence you need does not come from sounding perfect. It comes from being understood by the people in the room. It's your colleagues, your clients, the subcontractor, on site, someone on a Teams call. And when you see them nod and follow you and respond to what you actually said, that's when your confidence shifts and not when your accent disappears. And all of that, none of this is glamorous. It's not a fancy hotel. It's not an all-inclusive weekend, but it's just the version that works. So if that's your kind of approach, the unglamorous one that actually sticks, I run 2 one-on-one programs you might like. The first one is called The Foundation. It's one-on-one coaching built around your actual work, spread out over 12 weeks, so your English really sticks because it's built on a solid foundation, hence the name. It's business English and technical English taught by an engineer for engineers with a real project on a line. The second course is called the 25 minutes. Short, focused, one-on-one conversational sessions for engineers with really tight calendars. It's more of a coffee break vibe because sometimes 25 minutes of the right practice beats the 2 hours of the wrong kind. Links to both courses are in the show notes. And if you ever find yourself being pitched a 3-day miracle, take a breath, do the math, and ask what happens on day 4. And if you're not ready for either yet, that's okay. Just get on my newsletter. That's where this whole thing started. And it's the easiest way to keep sharpening this stuff week by week. That was it for today. That was English for Engineers. I'm your host, Olivia Augustin. Talk to you soon.